bob your head, Bryan. It's cool, man.
You know that?
It's cool. Like, come on, get into it a little bit. This is fun. There we go. It is episode number 4 of the EPLAY Numbers Tell Your Story podcast. I am Jamie Horton. We got a very special guest with us today and a very cool feature that we want to talk about. My very good friend, and here it is the NFL Draft 2020. So he is Bryan. You got to fight for your right to Partee. An homage there to our friend Chris Berman.
I always tell everybody that my son's name is, even though this is totally untrue, my son's name is Noah. But I tell him, I said, my son's name is Raymond Jean, so it's Ray Jean Partee.
There you go, Ray Jean Partee. Man, that's fantastic. Always a pleasure visiting with you, Bryan. Bryan Partee, and you are, look, so when I met you back in 2008. You were the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club of the Big Pines in Marshall, Texas. You are still an executive director, correct? But you've moved west?
Sherman.
Okay, so you're in Sherman.
Northwest. I run the Boys and Girls Club of Sherman. And it's a little bit smaller club, but we're growing and stuff like that. Serving the kids in Sherman. I took the place of a gentleman who ran the club for 25 years and retired. A really great guy named Mike DeLong. And so, yeah, it's a good opportunity. I mean, I always said that when I retire someday, I always wanted to be from a Boys and Girls Club because I believe in what they do, their mission, the real good company. They always make sure that if I need support, how do you do this? How do other clubs do this? They're real good at getting back to me real quickly. So, and of course, the mission of working with kids and encouraging. So, yeah, it's something I'm very passionate about.
Again, visiting with Bryan Partee, Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club in Sherman. And one of the main things we want to talk about here, this is also, I want to give some time to the Boys and Girls Club. Would love the opportunity for you to get a chance to talk about the Boys and Girls Club and all the things that you guys have to offer. But one of the things that I do want to discuss is an exciting thing that the Boys and Girls Club in Sherman and us over at EPLAY are going to be trying to put together this summer. I don't know if you can divulge that information yet, Bryan, but as far as I know, we've got a program that's coming your way this summer. Is that correct?
We do. What we're working on, this partnership that we started, Jamie and I just started talking about this, and it was a natural fit. Jamie and the EPLAY, they do stuff with the statistics, with numbers, ideas to help verify how good a player might be based on their actual numbers. A lot of times I remember Jamie once telling me, and I've done stats before. I used to do radio for Elysian Fields football, and if I, sometimes if I miss a run, how many yards is that? About 8, maybe. Let's say 8. Something like that. If you don't get everything down correctly and real precisely, the numbers could be kind of homegrown. So what EPLAY has proposed to us is there's a kind of a subsidiary, I don't know, would you call it a subsidiary, Jamie? It's your own program called StatClub. Oh, there's a good-looking guy right there back at the old club.
Yeah, if you want, I could kind of explain to you just a little bit, or just to give folks a little bit of an idea and a short synopsis. Essentially, what we want to do is we want to empower kids, we want to empower teams, we want to empower high schools, whatever the case may be, the ability to keep and provide or keep their own stats. Essentially, we want to be able to give kids the opportunity to learn how to do it, learn analytics, but learn how to keep stats. We want to get into things like editing video, game film, all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And we saw an opportunity there to have kids not only learn something. It's fun, it's math, but it's also it's sports. So you get to be around sports. But I think there's an opportunity for money to be made in the future for some of these kids as well. But as a basketball fan, I know that getting to travel around with a team and keep stats and watch high quality basketballs is also appealing. But the main idea behind it, Bryan, is to provide an outlet for kids to learn a new skill. Whether it be stats, video editing, what have you. But I think the partnership with the Boys and Girls Club gives us a lot of different avenues that we can go with this.
Yeah, well, see, the thing that I liked about it when we first talked about it was, first of all, every kid, you see this a lot, we run a junior NBA league, but every kid wants to play sports. But as you start getting to the higher levels, not every kid can play sports. I mean in a competitive, in a competitive nature. So what we ended up doing was this still allows kids to be associated with sports for one. So they'll get to play. They'll still get to be out there, learning and being around the athletes and all that kind of stuff. Oh, hey, me and Dak Prescott, nice picture. I still have the video, by the way, of Dak Prescott singing "Happy Birthday" with my son for my wife
Do
because
you
it was
do?
on her
How
birthday.
come there is no video of? Real quick story. Brian had me asked me to do something really really cool one time. Way
Oh,
back when the
fun!
Rangers, when baseball was a thing, you guys remember when baseball was played? It was a
I remember
game.
that sport.
You swung a wooden bat, and they had metal bats for lower levels. But anyway, it was this wonderful game back in the day that was invented, and they used to play it. I have no idea what happened to it. There's a man by the name of Ron Washington who took the Texas Rangers to back-to-back World Series, and I got an opportunity thanks to the Boys and Girls Club and Bryan Partee. He gave me, as I called it, my James Lipton moment at East Texas Baptist University. I got to sit on a stage with Ron Washington with just a singular light upon us,
Yeah.
silhouetted. It was a beautiful setting, a crowd, and I got to sit and interview Ron Washington live in front of a crowd. I wish there was video of that, Brian. How can we? Is there
I don't
somewhere?
know. There might be somewhere. I'd have to search out my hard drive. I took a lot of this when I left the club. I mean, we didn't my old club, and we didn't leave, like on bad terms. So a lot of the stuff that I had already created, I knew I was going to bring to Sherman. So why reinvent the wheel? So I might actually have some video. I'll take a look to see what I actually have. See if I can get something.
And in building on what you were talking about before I rudely interrupted you, we're a couple of guys that like to talk. Let's get back to that point. I know you mentioned Dak Prescott, but kind of the initiatives the club has been a part of and that you've been a part of over the years.
Well, the club does a lot of everything. That's the cool thing about the club. I always say that the club gives hope and opportunity. And the best part about it is that hope and opportunity, you don't know how that will manifest itself. There might be a kid who does art, and we are the ones who get them into the art, and they like it and love it and go to be a great artist. I mean, when we got to the point with Denzel Washington, he didn't want to be an actor. He wanted to be an NBA player, and it was his Boys and Girls Club that got him into the acting realm. So that part was kind of cool. Misty Copeland, the greatest ballet dancer in the world right now, she learned to dance at her Boys and Girls Club. She didn't know she liked to do dance and ballet, and then all the work that it takes to get there. I mean, the Boys and Girls Club has inspired so many kids. So we hit in the areas of character and leadership development, healthy lifestyles, the arts, and career and education. So we hit a lot of different stuff, and it gives you that broad view of what could I do? I mean, we took a bunch of kids to visit colleges, and we're not talking about the colleges that are in your neighborhood. Like we got a grant, and we hopped on a charter bus, and one of the trips that we took was like LSU, Alabama, Florida State, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, maybe. And I don't know if any of our kids actually attended any of those schools, but they got to see them. They've got to see something bigger than, in that case, Marshall. And I don't mean that as a slight on Marshall, because Marshall's a small town. But I mean, when we do the college trips through Texas, and again, by the way, let me preface this by saying I'm from California, so I have no battle in the UT and A&M and Texas Tech, and I'm not in that battle. It's not. I have no concern on that. But when we took them to UT, for example, I wanted the population of Marshall is like 24,000. The undergrad population at UT is 50,000. I mean, the college is double the size of where you're coming from, and I wanted them to see and experience that bigness of the schools. I mean, the largest campus in the country is Texas Tech. Well, officially it's the Air Force Academy because they get to count the runways as part of their classrooms, because I guess it is. But as far as a traditional college, it's Texas Tech, and I believe the furthest you can be apart from two classes is like 4.5 miles or 5 miles. And I wanted the kids to see that you're not taking an 8 a.m. class over here and then taking a 9 a.m. class over here. You know what I mean? Just to see it and experience it. And if they love Texas Tech, or if they love UT, or what if they great. That's what I think that the Boys and Girls Club does so well. And we have just a litany of 75 programs now to transition and segue into what we were talking about, Jamie. Uh, one of the things that the clubs are always looking for is an opportunity to do STEM related stuff. And the M in STEM stands for mathematics, and statistics are math. If you just break it down to its basic form, statistics are math. My least favorite math class I ever took in college, but still, it's still math.
It's a
And
different
so
kind, though. This is a different
it's a
kind of
different kind of math. Yeah, and this is
absolutely.
much more fun. This is much
Yeah,
more
this is
fun.
much more enjoyable.
You know, so, a couple things on this one is one, it gives those kids this opportunity to A, stay associated with sports that we talked about. B, it lets them learn something because my son is a basketball player. And one time, and I told the story the other day to Jamie and to everybody at EPLAY when we were having a video conference. Um, I was like, Noah in one game was 8 for 10 or something like that, and I go, you know what that means? And he goes, nope. You know how you figure it out? Nope. I was just 8 for 10. I was like, well, that means 80%. That means on average, if you shot the ball 100 times, 80 times you'd put it in the basket. And he didn't know that. And I said, that's an important thing for you to know. If you're looking at the other team, if you're looking at a guy who scores 10 points a game, but his shooting average is 90%, man, you better keep a hand in that guy's face because when he gets his chance to shoot, he's going to shoot and make them based on those statistics. So that's the other part I like about it. But then the third part is when these kids go to college, a lot of radio stations, local radio stations, a lot of college programs, a lot of sports programs are looking for somebody to keep stats. And for you to say that you know how to do it and know how to do it properly, I think that'll have a whole lot of weight for you get. And again, like we said earlier, could it lead to a career? Sure, it could. It could. Yeah. But in the meantime, it can certainly help pay those expensive college bills and give you something to do. And of course, the fun part about again being kind of travel with the team and hanging out. I'm kind of cool. I'm not quite the basketball player, but I'm kind of cool because I get to hang around with them and be part of. I get to wear the jersey, stuff
Yeah.
like that. It's also, I think self-esteem is something you can't underestimate by any means.
Again, visiting with Bryan Partee, executive director of the Boys and Girls Club out in Sherman, Texas. Friend of mine now for a dozen years that we met back in his time during being the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club of the Big Pines in Marshall,
Yeah,
Texas, which is where my radio career started. You mentioned that, and I think that's one of the
yeah,
aspects of it. Another idea, look, kids, and I'll say this as a fat kid, 9 times out of 10, you do things like that, and you get to travel with the team. That team usually buys you a meal. I'm just saying. Hey, it worked out for me.
yeah.
Ended up a lot of Burger Kings. I've seen a lot of Burger Kings in East Texas and Northeast Texas, Brian, from Texarkana all the way down to Nacogdoches and even further south. But talking about our StatClub initiative, we are partnering EPLAY with the Boys and Girls Club. Talk about what is the advantage of us doing that, Brian, in terms of getting this into the hands of the Boys and Girls Club and obviously the ability for growth there. I mean, there's Boys and Girls Club of America. It's not just Sherman. It's all over the place. What are the
Sure.
advantages of this?
Well, first of all, yeah, Boys and Girls Club is a $2 billion organization. We've got 4,000 or so clubs all around the world. And because I've been there for such a long time at the previous club and now here, I've got a lot of good connections. I know a lot of CEOs, so I can help promote the program. We run it and test it out in our program at the club and then run it, go bigger, scale it so everybody else can start using it. But the cool thing about it also is that Boys and Girls Clubs often see a lot of teachers, educators who retire but still want to work, and they like going to a Boys and Girls Club because we don't have the restrictions of the state that the TEA and stuff put on them. Because there are strict rules that are in place. I always tell my staff, hey, make it work, go do it. So there's a lot of freedom in doing that, to where it allows us as a Boys and Girls Club is if I'm the CEO of the organization and I want to go ahead and say, let's do a basketball program, let's do a stats program, let's do a quilting program. If I have the means to do it, I can do it. And obviously, with working with the Stat Club and ePlay, that you guys are the experts on this, and you can help us administer it. I always tell everybody, I usually have the commodity, I have the product, but you have the knowledge. So you get that knowledge to me, and I can disseminate it to a lot of people. A lot of kids can get it, and I think that's one of the great things about it is we can really make this look the way we want to make it look. If if we want, we can. I was suggesting to EPLAY about making classes, for example, something that could be translated, and we can do it through Zoom. And there could also then be components that I would teach my staff. My staff is very well trained. All Boys and Girls Club staffs are pretty well trained, to where they would go through and they would do. We do the first part on Zoom, and then let's leave Zoom with the EPLAY people and let my staff carry over and finish the activity. So you can handle that individual stuff. I think that's such a great part because you can, like I said, we're in the testing phase, and that'll allow us to test. And when I say testing phase, I mean obviously ePlay and you guys in the StatClub, you have a proven program with your statistics and tracking and keeping statistics. When I say testing it out to kids, what do we need to tweak? Is this too advanced? Is this too basic? What would be a good line to make it really stick to the kids and make them want to do it?
And then obviously from there, once you've got a model that we can do in Sherman, Texas, the idea is to grow it from there.
Yeah. Every club can do it.
Move that same model elsewhere. Bryan, let's talk about a little bit about the sports. I mean, obviously, you mentioned quilting. I know in Marshall you did a T-shirt printing company, a business. You started a business with these kids. I know I helped work with you a few times on radio and television equipment, stuff that you guys were putting together there at the club.
So put on our radio station.
Yeah, so kids can learn how to run a radio station and run a board and pipe commercials and what kind of software. Everything's now digital. How to edit audio, how to edit all those kinds of things. So the Boys and Girls Club, this is not just about athletics. It's about there was a graphic or a picture I showed. It's mind, body, soul, right? That's kind of the idea behind.
Well, that's one of our programs. That's triple play. They try to hit every aspect of it. And again, Boys and Girls Club. I'll tell you this: across the country, Boys and Girls Clubs often suffer from, they say, gym and swim, and that's right. We have a gym, and a lot of places have a pool, and that's all we do. And people have a tendency, and I'll tell you this on sports, they have a tendency to shy away from sports. Like it's a bad thing, and we're only STEM, we're only STEM, we're only STEM. My whole thing is sports teaches teamwork, it's healthy lifestyles, it's getting kids active, because kids are really good at this. And they're not real good at actually going out and throwing a football or taking a shot or just even walking around the neighborhood, riding your bikes or whatever. There's not bad stuff with sports. It's people just dumb athletes, kind of thing. There's a lot to sports, but there's more to everything that a Boys and Girls Club does. Like my big brag, I'm not self-gratuitous unless it's fantasy football, but our big thing was at the club that we were so proud of is in the 15 years that I was there, we had one kid not graduate high school. One. I'm not a big, and that's not, hey, Brian's awesome. There was Shelly, there was Chanel, there was Carrie, there was Heather. Our staff was, awesome, and they bought into the whole thing that Boys and Girls Club says about enriching a child's life from all areas. So there's so many different things that a Boys and Girls Club can touch. Because again, not every kid's an athlete, and there are some kids who are the nerdy computer guys. That turn into Bill Gates. There's that weirdo drama kid over there in the corner who turns out to be Denzel Washington. We work with a variety of kids and a variety of types of kids and keep them safe, keep them enriched, keep them protected. The preventative programming, the enrichment programming. It's just so. I don't think the great thing where it comes to the club, and again, transitioning back to the ePlay stuff and the StatClub, there's nothing that we couldn't do. I mean, my only limitation probably would be money. If we say, okay, we want to do a photography class, and we need 20 cameras that are $1,000 each, I've got to write a grant for it, and we probably can't do that right away. But if we just say, hey, we're going to learn how to do photography on our iPhone and go take some pictures with our iPhone and learn how to do that and edit from there, I got a class right there just like that.
Again, visiting with Bryan Partee, Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club in Sherman, Texas, here on the ePlay Numbers Tell Your Story podcast. Bryan, I've been so excited about this since I talked to you about this about a year ago. And then it just kind of, we got busy and a lot of things were moving, a lot of moving parts. And I think the timing now with everything that we're dealing with COVID-19, coronavirus, by the way, I hope you and yours are doing well and that everybody else is minding the social distancing orders and staying at home and looking out for your friends and neighbors, because that's what it's all about. You distance so you can protect others as well as your family. But this opportunity, because of this sort of void without sports and school now, even we had an opportunity, and I got a chance to reach back out with you, and I've been so excited for the last couple of weeks in talking to you and getting the folks here at EPLAY and Rohan, who will be on the podcast with me tomorrow as we dive a little bit deeper into StatClub and a little bit more of the meat and potatoes of it. But the idea that this is something that can be implemented so quickly. I mean, it's summertime essentially now for kids in school because they don't have to go back to school buildings. They still got to do schoolwork. But right. In just a few short months, how does that happen? How is the Boys and Girls Club of America able to do that and get that kind of turnover so quick for somebody like us who puts together an initiative and says, hey, we want you guys to get involved. How can you help? How can we help? How are you guys able to do this so fast?
Well, the big thing about it is we're all, okay, I don't know if everybody who's going to be watching this knows their geography real well, but in our area, there's Sherman, and then there's Denison, and about 20 miles to the west is Gainesville. A little bit north of us is Oklahoma. I mean, by 12 miles. We're all Boys and Girls Club. We always say, if you see my shirt here, I don't know if this is going to be only radio or video, but the shirt, they call this the knuckles. I'm trying to do it backwards in the camera. The hands, the knuckles. And the knuckles, the thing about the knuckles is that we pay as an individual organization to use the branding from the Boys and Girls Club, and then, of course, all the resources and stuff like that. So I am under the same umbrella as Denison and Gainesville, but we're all individual organizations. So they're run independently, which means you're not going to get an edict from Boys and Girls Club of America and say, you have to do StatClub or you're out. Each club has their option of, does this fit our program? Do we want to do this? I mean, it would help if they run sports within their program. And I know it's like 68% of Boys and Girls Clubs run sports through their program. So a lot of clubs do sports. So it gives us the opportunity to say, okay, you got a sports. You already got a built-in data pool of the kids playing junior NBA or NFL youth football, any of those kind of things. And so then you take your other kids who are learning the Stats Club and bring them over to watch your kid. So it's like we have the connections, Jamie, but we can do what we want individually. I mean, there could be one guy who goes, I hate sports and I want nothing to do with this, or I hate art and I want nothing to do with art program. Yeah. That's how they can develop their own programs. But again, like I mentioned at the very beginning, because this is STEM related, and I can tell you everybody wants STEM programming, but because it's STEM related, I think that makes it more appealing, and it appeals in a boring mathematical way. Because sure. Math is boring, math is dumb, and that's what you're going to hear from the kids. And this is kind of a fun way to. It's what we call in the business HYLA, high yield learning activities. And this is a high yield learning activity. This is kids are doing something that they don't realize that they're actually learning and figuring things out.
You mentioned the Junior NBA, again visiting Bryan Partee. He's the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club in Sherman, Texas. A friend of mine and now a friend of ours here at EPLAY on the Numbers Tell Your Story podcast. You had mentioned the Junior NBA, and that's something I got a chance to kind of see firsthand in working with you in Marshall, Texas, was the amount of resources that you had available and the amount of resources that you were able to get in a short period of time, whether it was Junior NBA getting jerseys and equipment, whether it was the NFL youth football. I know I got a chance to coach flag football.
Yeah,
we mentioned baseball.
Right? We were the Cardinals, weren't we?
Yes, we were. That was like 2009. I was like my first, that first year there, and we had that good little running back, and his name was Terrell Davis, by the way. Do you remember? Yeah. His name was Terrell Davis. Yeah, that little kid.
And who's our dog? Dog was our other coach, remember?
Yeah, that's right. Terrell, he was born to be a running back.
I only mentioned Dog because he randomly out of the blue sent me a text the other day going, hey, how you doing?
By the way, Dog's a former professional wrestler, you guys.
Former professional wrestler.
Yeah.
Former professional wrestler.
Another one of our friends back in Marshall. But the resources that you guys have available to you, and we mentioned the Junior NBA. You mentioned also that you can do whatever you want to. The idea of implementing this curriculum and implementing this what these kids are learning in maybe keeping stats of junior NBA games. Is that something that's an idea, or is that something that's a part of the framework as well, or could be done?
Oh yeah, it could be done easily. And then just to take a step back on what you were just saying before that is when you said the resources, the Boys and Girls Club, and that's another great reason why it's good to partner up with BGCA. We have national partnerships with all the major sports organizations. So like when our kids were playing junior NBA, and I just use the Lakers because their colors are very prominent. When you're the Lakers, you wore the purple and gold. You didn't wear a T-shirt that's purple with an L on it. You were wearing the purple and gold, and that's kind of cool. When Jamie and I coached the Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals, we had the jersey with the cardinal on it and the little cardinal on the sleeves and stuff like that. And of course, going back to the probably the most one of the most stat intensive sports, baseball, where they live and die by their stats. The biggest sponsor nationally for Boys and Girls Club is Major League Baseball. So when baseball gets going, my goodness, that's what a way to roll
Isn't that
into.
the RBI program?
Huh?
Is that the
Yeah,
RBI program?
yeah. The RBI programs were targeted to be a Boys and Girls Club program. Now they opened it up to everywhere because one of the reasons with the numbers, regrettably with baseball, are that they're going down. The number of the enrollment of kids playing baseball compared to soccer is clearly going up. Baseball is kind of going down. So they wanted to partner with the Boys and Girls Club, and BGCA and MLB put in a lot of money. Like if I wanted to in Sherman um, build a baseball park, a baseball field, there'd be a lot of money available to me to try to get that done so we can let our kids play baseball. Now, I'm not going to do that, and I only say that because there's already a good thriving sports league up in North Texas for baseball, and I don't want to. There's no reason to compete. Sherman's a smaller town. If I take half the kids, if I try to do baseball, we do all the cool stuff, and I have half the kids, and their league has half the kids, then you kind of just water everything down. So I try to do stuff that's different, so we don't have to have that competition, and still allow kids to not have to make a choice of, well, I go to the Boys and Girls Club, but my friend plays in the other league, and I don't. You know what I mean?
For
Just
sure.
let's play just baseball. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Again, visiting Bryan Partee. He's a friend of ours here at EPLAY. EPLAY Numbers Tell Your Story podcast. He's the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club. I almost said of the Big Pines in Sherman, not of the Big Pines in Sherman. But that's so programmed in my brain. I was talking to my colleague and friend Charles, who I know you've met with us here at EPLAY not long ago, and I was like, being in radio has programmed my ears where I can be having a conversation with somebody, but I'm programmed to listen because you've been to the station, and we had monitors everywhere. There was radios going everywhere, so we had an FM feed and AM feed, so we could hear if we were in other rooms, if we lost signal, if there was overplay or whatever. So I had trained myself to remember all of these words and these names, and then obviously hearing things. If it goes wrong, like I could be talking to you, I gotta go. The things off the air. But we did so many commercials together that Boys and Girls Club of the Big Pines is just kind of, it's engraved in there. So I will ingrain whatever the word is. It doesn't matter. It's
I was there quite a while.
Yeah, it's a long time. Bryan, I did want to also, I guess, kind of touch on the implementation of StatClub in terms of our partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. Sort of the time frame. I know we can't give away too much. We don't really have a big time, or we have a bold time frame. We would like to get this into the hands of Boys and Girls Club in Sherman this summer. So what are we talking? 60 days?
Oh yeah, probably. So obviously the big thing, minus where we are in the world with the virus and stuff like that. Depending on what the governor says, the governor's supposed to have another conference on Monday, where we might get a little more clarity on larger groups and stuff like that. That's the only thing that would kind of hold us back to do it right away. I mean, we're talking, again, we're going to use my club as kind of the test club and get kids involved in doing it, and do, whether it's a series of, the Rohan, the guy you're going to talk to tomorrow, he's the kind of from what I understand, the mastermind behind really putting together some functionality for this program. He understands stats and stuff like that really well. So we get Rohan on all that stuff, and he punches through with that and says, okay, we're going to do this in a series of 10 classes or 7 classes or whatever, and we'll have our kids go through those programs. And again, it could go as quick as, if we wanted it, if let's say Rohan comes up with 10 classes, and we do it twice a week. Well, that's 5 weeks. We've got a working model, and then we can, of course, come back, do a little tweaking, say this works, this doesn't work, and then push it out to all the other clubs and say, I can go to the other clubs and say, hey, I've got a really great program that's a statistics program with numbers, with high yield learning activities, with it's a STEM related activity, and I think clubs will jump all over it to have the opportunity to expand it. Now, one of the other things, and we discussed this, that we really need to make sure we do is you've got to give value to StatClub. And what I mean by that is having a kid go through the first 5 classes, maybe that's intro, and you're StatClub Mark 1. And then you go through the next 4, which are a little more in depth, or maybe it's sports specific. So I could be StatClub Mark 1 baseball or StatClub Mark 1 football. All will be kind of related, but there's still obviously some nuances between the sports and what you watch for and what stats you have to keep, how you calculate them. I mean, that stuff that the ESPN uses all the time, the WAR stat for baseball, wins over whatever.
Wins above replacement. Yeah.
Yeah, that thing. All that whole mess.
Very
That's a
important
whole.
stat.
That's a whole calculus. I don't. That's why I don't play baseball anymore. I got out. Done with that. So I mean, it's. I think basically it's a real quick turnaround. It's something that you could do pretty quickly. And the great thing about it is because I'm a part of this to help you guys out. We can really tweak it as we go and take notes and say how did this go and what worked and what didn't work, so we can again get a working product. Because one of the things I will credit Boys and Girls Club for, any of the programs we ever get from them or that outside vendors bring to us, I always do this comparison because a long time ago I was in the computer industry. I had a computer store. I can build a computer from parts and that kind of thing. I can do computers. Can't hammer a nail into the wall to save my life, but I can build a computer. Anyway, so Microsoft, here's the way it works. Microsoft would get something out, and then they let the public kind of be the beta testers, and they say, oh, yeah, well, I was doing this, and then it bombed out, and I was doing this, and it bombed out. I mean, that was notorious for, Windows 2000, starting at Windows 95.
Windows 95.
They would let it, yeah, well, starting with 95 all the way up, but, I mean, they would constantly put out releases, and then they'd put out these giant patches that you could download, and then everything would work fine. As opposed to Apple has a tendency to they take a little longer to put stuff out, but it's 99% working. I mean, their engineers and their computer people go through and they try to make it break. And it broke here, so let's fix this. It broke here, fix this. And they fix everything, so you have a really working product coming out. So that analogy is to that our goal is to try to get this to be like an Apple product. It needs to be something that's going to come out and be ready to roll. We don't need hiccups from clubs. I don't want a club in Arizona calling me and going, yeah, we tried this and it was kind of did this and we didn't understand that. We've got to make it step by step for and I don't mean this in an insulting way, but for the dopiest person in the world to be able to teach the program, to understand the program. We don't want to make it that you have to be, a numbers PhD in statistical theory kind of guy to be able to do this. This is something that, yeah, can you advance with more knowledge and more? Yes. If you're a numbers person, that's even better for you. But we want to make it so even the person who's not a numbers person, the kid who is the dopiest, I'm not paying attention math kid, or the staff person who's like, well, I'm more of an art person. Well, you got to fill in today and you got to help us out. They could do it. We want to make it that simple, that right out of the box kind of thing, so then you can start immediately impacting these kids.
You'd mentioned something there, and then it kind of escaped me. Go ahead and say everything you just said again until I remember. Okay, everything you just said, word for word, and then it'll hit me in the. Oh, what I was going to say is I think you just said we're Apple.
I did.
It's basically that's what you said.
That's what you want to be for sure.
Absolutely.
Because if I gave you, here's the thing that where I reference to the programming for Boys and Girls Club, Jamie, is that we have a program that we talked about, the healthy mind, body, soul, is called Triple Play. If I gave you the Triple Play manual today and said, hey, tomorrow I need you to teach this class for me at the club in an emergency situation because my Triple Play guy is gone or whatever, you could do it because the manual is so step by step, so well written. Here's what we're going to teach in class. Here's the underlying of what we want the kids to learn. Here's the activity. Here are the supplies you'll need. Whatever. So you can really be. It makes it so you can really be prepared. You're not fumbling around for anything. You're not going, yeah, we kind of need. Hold on a second. Let me look. It's right in front of you, and they make it so simple. And that's what I'm hoping that we're going to get, Rohan when he's working on some of this stuff. And I told Rohan I'd be glad to help do the lesson plans only because I've done lesson plans a lot. But it's just getting it to a level of being basically perfect, where it's just ready to go for everybody to use.
We strive for perfect around here. Just FYI, that's the goal always. Bryan Partee, executive director of the Boys and Girls Club in Sherman, Texas, and friend of ours here now at EPLAY, and this is the EPLAY Numbers Tell Your Story podcast. He talked about Rohan Dang. We'll be visiting with him tomorrow. He heads up our StatClub initiative, and I'll get into the deep dive with Rohan tomorrow, but did want to talk about our partnership now. It's a very exciting time for all of us. I think it's exciting for us. I know it's especially exciting for Bryan and the folks at the Boys and Girls Club to be having this. I guess it's a wonderful privilege, right? To be reunited again and have
It's
this
another opportunity.
There's never, and I know I was being a little jokey or whatever, but there's never in your business and in the business of kids and learning and everything else, you can never have enough of things like this, enough opportunities, enough doors. So I think it's really awesome all the way around.
You just said it, and I started off when we first started the podcast here. That was a big thing. I used the word opportunities, and that's what it is. It's an opportunity for kids. They're not going to get the opportunity to learn how to do stats, to watch sports and learn how to do stats, to do something with numbers that they won't think is, this is so stupid. It's going to be something fun. I mean, yes, is it going to be tedious, or are you going to have to pay attention? Yeah, because if you miss some yardage, or if you miss somebody shooting, or who shot that, and all those kind of things, then your stats aren't pure. So you got to learn how to do that and be, focused when you're actually doing the game. But that's the stuff we teach them. We teach them how to be focused. We teach them what exactly to look for. And I think that's going to be the key part of it.
You remember how hard it was when we'd sit there and do football on Friday nights and have to keep your own stats? Luckily,
actually,
when I got bumped up into covering big time Marshall football, I had a stats guy. There was a fire chief, Reggie Cooper was stats guy.
Yeah. Reggie was one of my board members. He's a terrific dude. But my wife, Karen, would always, before we had Noah, Karen would travel with me on Elysian Fields. And so we would do the stats, and I would always do, because I was the voice. She didn't ever want to be on air or anything, but she'd help me out. And she would do all the heavy lifting. She would do the yards, the who carried the ball, how many yards on the reception, etc. And I'd keep like the defensive stats, which are a lot easier because it's, a lot of times, especially in high school football, you get those one or two dominant players that just squash everybody. So it's going to be like, 4 kids with, 3 tackles each, and then 1 kid with like 25 tackles, so you can always just chalk it up there. So, yeah, no, I remember it was all, heck, back before I was with the same station I officially was with K-Gas, is who I did it through, down there when we did the Leisure Fields under the K-Gas umbrella. And we actually had bag phones where you call in with a bag phone and hook a microphone kind of in them. It was ridiculous. I mean, it was the technology at the time, but I even go back to, I remember my very first year I did Harleton, which anybody who knows anything about East Texas, Harleton is like, I think my apartment complex could declare war on Harleton and win because it's so small. Harleton's teeny tiny. And we had to do a phone line, and we had to like run an actual phone line like you could go buy at Walmart or something. We need like 300 feet and run it from one side and clip it in, pull the phone out and run it up and do all. It was insane because there's no air conditioning in a lot of these things. So in the first games of the year, they were ridiculously hot. A lot of them didn't have windows. They kind of folded up with wood, so bugs and mosquitoes and all were all in there all the time. They never fed you. And my first radio gig out of college and stuff that I got to do was with the Dream Team at UC San Diego. And
wait a minute,
you
got to tell this story real quick. It's a basketball story. It's basketball company. Got to tell this story. Dream Team. When people talk about the Dream Team, especially younger kids, a lot of the younger kids have no idea that basketball was played in the '90s by some great people as well.
Kind of appropriate because the ESPN has their little miniseries going on right now. Their 10-part miniseries on the last days of the Bulls. The Dream Team was the first year. 1992 was the first year that the United States was going to send professional players. Now the Olympics said they said you could send professional players to the Olympics. All these other countries had been doing it, but their leagues weren't certified as like they're like recreational or something. It was some technicality. Anyway, all that to say that the NBA took Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, Clyde Drexler. I mean, you just name them; they were all there. They happened to choose UC San Diego, and at the time, I was one of the voices. I did color for UCSD Tritons for basketball. The guy I did it with was a guy by the name of Craig Elston, and they said they were coming to UCSD. Now, the reason why they came to UCSD, first of all, we have a very beautiful campus. It's right, like seriously, a stone's throw away from the ocean, so you can hear the ocean and stuff like that. So it's beautiful. But it's also right across the street, directly across the street from Torrey Pines Golf Course. Maybe a quarter of a mile away. And you've heard the stories. Well, you might have not heard the stories, but um, Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley and Larry Bird and all them, they loved playing golf. So what they would do is they would practice in the morning at UC San Diego at Triton Gym, right by the hump. We had this big hump for whatever reason, and that's where people would sit on the hump and sit in the sun. Um, and then they'd go play. They'd rent out Torrey Pines in the afternoon and just play golf. And so I was lucky enough, being one of the voices of the Tritons, that I got a pass with the for the dream team, and I mean, they were like kicking people out, and I got to talk to Chuck Daly, and I met Karl Malone, and I mean, it was wild. That was my first experience. So comparing that, and then of course I did some work with TNT. One of my friends uh, moved up real high in TNT and got me in doing some stuff with TNT, and of course when you don't always get paid the super highest, but boy, do they feed you well, much like you were alluding to earlier. And so I would sit there and just chug on the press food and stuff like that. Well, Harleton didn't really have press food. If we got pizza, some nights was a good night.
Homecoming.
So you go from really really nice setup to kind of different. Kind of not. I don't.
There are some perks, though. I will say this to you kids and folks that want to get involved and become a part of the Stat Club, and certainly we'd love to see the growth. We'd love to see the next, like the Denzel Washington of stats, that comes from the Boys and Girls Club. It'd be awesome. I just think it's such a really cool thing. Brian, before we let you go, man, I wanted to give you an opportunity here to talk Boys and Girls Club. Give an opportunity to promote the club, promote some of your initiatives, some of the things you guys got going on, but just talk about the Boys and Girls Club, how folks can get involved. So I want to give you the floor for a minute for that.
Well, thanks. Basically, first of all, since this is a podcast, anybody can listen to it anywhere. The great thing about it is there's Boys and Girls Clubs everywhere. Big cities, little towns, military bases, Native American, Indian land. There's all over the place. So we serve kids wherever they're needed. And it looks different because the needs of kids in a rural North Texas, East Texas town is very, very different from what you would experience in downtown LA. I always use this when I speak to Rotary clubs as a joke, but Marshall and Sherman, we don't really have gang problems. There might be some people who say something about that, but I mean, my whole thing is, if you're a member of the Sherman chapter of the Crips, probably not real good at the gang thing. Whereas if you live in New York or Los Angeles and stuff, that's a real reality that you risk going home and not having a safe place.
Did you call it a Sherman chapter? Like they've
Sherman
got
chapter.
So they've got like dental and like they're unionized. So they got dental plan and all kinds of
matching shirts and tattoos. That's how we do it.
Please continue.
So no problem. So we help kids in all different areas. And again, one of the things that they'd always say, and this is one of the stories that I like to talk about, they always talk about the kids who need us most. And everybody thinks that's the poor, downtrodden, oh, my family's broke, single parent, and every worst scenario that you can think of. And it's not always that case. And my story is this, I was running the club, and I coincidentally was a city commissioner in Marshall during this time. So I had a little bit of leverage. But Katrina hit, and Rita hit. So we had those two hurricanes came within not long of each other. And we would get Katrina kids. We got some Rita kids coming up from the Houston area. But we had one girl who showed up from New Orleans. She was from the Garden District, and if you know anything about New Orleans and the Garden District, if you're living in the Garden District, you're living large. It's a very wealthy, very nice, very quaint place. It's one of my favorite places in New Orleans to go. It's just so historic and neat, and trees that cross over the roadways above them and like provide natural shade. And there's trolley cars. It's great. Well, she was forced to evacuate. She was put on a bus, and she ended up with us. She left with one pair of shoes. That's it. So we're talking about a kid who had a pretty privileged life, I would assume, pretty privileged life, and was thrown on a bus away from her family. Now that's a kid who needs us most. And also to emphasize the story, this this kind of sounds crazy now, especially since we're doing a broadcast over the internet. But the internet was kind of brand new. There was no Facebook when Katrina hit, and so she was just whisked off. She didn't know where her parents were. Not everybody had a cell phone. I mean, in fact, if you had a cell phone, you were kind of on the wealthy side. You're lucky to have a cell phone. I mean, those were way more rare than they were common. And so she was put on a bus. She couldn't find her family. She was terrified. She stayed in our shelter. What ended up happening was the city of Marshall wanted to take over, commandeer the Boys and Girls Club, because our club there had a gym, a nice big gym area, and had showers and stuff because it was connected to the city pool. We opted to, and I begged the fire chief at the time, Mr. Buzz Snyder, to not take over our building. And what I would do is come over and get the kids and let them, because I mean, we all see right now being confined with kids how crazy it is. And, I mean, I love my son, but I'm with him 24 hours a day, literally 24 hours a day. We're not leaving the apartment to be safe. So anyway, so she was put in that same situation. Kids were going stir crazy. We invited them to the club. They played basketball till 10, 11 o'clock at night. We brought them back, but she finally found her family. But when you talk about what a club does for kids who need us most, that could look any different way. That could be I mean, it always shocked me. In Malibu, California, there's a Boys and Girls Club. And I was like, well, Malibu, that's stupid. Every house is worth $1 trillion. And that first house right over there, that's Kardashian house. The second house is where Johnny Carson used to live. I mean, we're talking, what problems do those kids have? Well, those kids have parents who don't care about them, who don't engage in their lives necessarily because they're, in, Romania filming a movie, or they're promoting their new album on tour because these are celebrity wealthy people. So a kid who needs us most, who needs adult guidance, who needs the direction of, getting into drugs, or my boyfriend's being mean and pushing me and hitting me, or whatever. You don't know what that looks like. Every club is different, but the great thing about clubs is they're so malleable that it makes it so kids can adapt, and every kid can fit into a club, and just have a safe place to go after school, and then get the other enrichment stuff. I mean, I always tell everybody, if I get a kid who's a gym rat and just wants to stay in the gym and shoot baskets and not do any of our programming, do I care? I don't care. I really don't, because I'd rather have them within our walls being safe and just shooting baskets than out beyond our walls doing something dopey. Do I want them to be in our programming? Oh yeah, for sure. And I want them to see what everybody else is doing, and hey, why don't you try this? And, get them into it, but just get them in first. And that's what every club offers. And of course, one thing I'll tell you is our fees are $30 a month. And we feed you, you have computer access, you get homework help, we have the game room, the arts, the gym, all the programming we do. We stay open till late so parents can work later, not have to rush immediately and worry about where their kids are going. And that's for $30 a month. So $1 a month, pretty good deal. So financially, it's helpful, and what it gives to the community. And I'll close with this one, and I'll paraphrase, but this is coming from, seeing that we're in the NFL draft coming, today. I don't know when this is going to broadcast, but today when we're filming it, we'll translate it to Tony Gonzalez, who is a Boys and Girls Club kid. He was several years ago. He was put into the Boys and Girls Club Hall of Fame, not the, he went to the NFL Hall of Fame this year, or maybe it was last year, but he's a Hall of Famer. And what he said, and again, I'm going to paraphrase, but he goes, listen, I'm real happy that I get this opportunity to be on TV at the time he was still playing, so on every Sunday. But not every kid who goes to the Boys and Girls Club is going to be 6'9" and 280 pounds and be able to run, kind of thing. He said, where the value of the Boys and Girls Club is think of all those kids who aren't my size and who aren't athletic, but who get their education, who don't get in trouble with the law, who don't get teen pregnancy, don't get involved in drugs, who vote, who learn to be responsible taxpayers. That's the impact of a Boys and Girls Club to a community.
Bryan Partee, Executive Director, Boys and Girls Club of Sherman in Sherman, Texas. Friend of ours here at EPLAY is, again, announcing a partnership here with us. That StatClub and the Boys and Girls Club are now a thing. It's the symbol, right?
The knuckles.
The knuckles.
Yep.
So EPLAY, Boys and Girls Club together. So EPLAY Numbers Tell Your Story podcast, Bryan Partee. Man, I appreciate this. This is so much fun. I love talking to you, man. We always have a good time. There's always something to talk about, for sure, because, well, between you wanting to continually put me down on fantasy football and everything else, it's kind of a bummer, man. But I appreciate your time so much, Bryan, man. I thank you. I'm really excited about what we've got going on with Boys and Girls Club and the Stat Club initiative. And hopefully, we'll know a little bit more this next week, and we'll be able to kind of tell everybody what's next. But I think the goal would be, July. That seems feasible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can't really tell what a virus is going to do or how everything's going to play out, but I think that would be a nice thing.
Gotta keep our fingers crossed. I mean, like you said earlier, we gotta be safe. Let's keep our fingers crossed. And I miss my kids, but I don't miss them to the extent at the club. I don't miss them to the extent of wanting to see any of them. I don't want to see this go through my club either. So we want to make sure we're doing everything very safely.
Bryan, thank you so much. Boys and Girls Club of America. You guys check them out, be a part of it, see what you can do to help these folks out. They are a fantastic organization doing it for a long time. Thanks again, Bryan. The Numbers Tell Your Story podcast, EPLAY, Numbers Tell Your Story. I am Jamie Horton. That'll do it for us, guys. Until next time.